I'm bringing you a comprehensive analysis of the mounting national security challenges facing the United States, following unprecedented foreign policy decisions that have fundamentally altered the geopolitical landscape in ways that experts across the intelligence community are still struggling to comprehend. Let's start with the basics. Iran is a large country. More than 90 million people call it home. It's a powerful nation with a sophisticated, intensively resourced, world-class intelligence and security apparatus. These are organizations that have demonstrated remarkable capability, remarkable reach, and if we're being honest, remarkable ruthlessness in their operations. Now, these Iranian security services and intelligence services have a particular focus domestically. They target their own population at home to maintain control, and the results have been absolutely disastrous and murderous, particularly in recent years. But what's important to understand is that these same services don't limit their activities to Iran's borders. They have tentacles that extend all around the world. They've used these networks to target what they perceive as threats to the regime, perceived enemies all over the world, and yes, that includes the United States of America. For years, the U.S. government has been closely monitoring Iranian intelligence operations. American intelligence officials know exactly what the Iranians are capable of. They understand their methods. They're familiar with their tactics. They know what the Iranians have been attempting to do, both within the United States and abroad. The United States government, recognizing the severity and the sophistication of these threats, established within the Federal Bureau of Investigation a specialized counterintelligence division. This division consists of agents and analysts who dedicate their careers to understanding and countering threats, specifically emanating from Iran. It's a unit within the FBI. The unit is called CI-12. CI stands for counterintelligence. CI-12. This unit has an extraordinary track record. We're talking about elite federal agents who have successfully identified and apprehended Iranian intelligence operatives working on American soil. We're talking about professionals who disrupted plots, serious plots, to assassinate American government officials. They uncovered a conspiracy to murder John Bolton, the former national security advisor. They discovered plots against Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook. They even identified and disrupted a plot against former President Donald Trump himself. These are highly trained, deeply experienced specialists who have devoted their professional lives to understanding the Iranian threat matrix. They are, quite frankly, irreplaceable assets in the American intelligence community. And frankly, we should all be grateful that we have them, or at least we should have been grateful. Now let's talk about what happened just days ago. According to reporting from major American newspapers, The Washington Post and the New York Times, the Trump administration, for reasons that remain unclear and that the administration has struggled to articulate coherently, launched military operations against Iran. These were not defensive operations. There was no imminent threat assessment. There was no credible intelligence suggesting that Iran posed an immediate danger to the American homeland. In fact, and this is crucial, U.S. intelligence agencies assess that Iran's military forces were unlikely to pose an immediate threat to the United States mainland within the next decade. That's a direct quote from American intelligence assessments. The intelligence community had concluded that while Iran certainly represents a long-term strategic concern, an immediate military response was not strategically justified. Yet the operations proceeded anyway. Why? According to investigative reporting, the decision was made because Saudi Arabia and Israel requested it, not because American intelligence demanded it, not because there was an immediate threat to American lives or American interests, but because our Middle Eastern allies wanted the United States to take military action against Iran. Think about that for a moment. The United States military, the most powerful military force on the planet, was put at the disposal of other nations' strategic objectives, even though American intelligence assessments indicated no imminent threat requiring such action. And so now we find ourselves where we are. The consequences have been swift and devastating. 6 American service members are confirmed dead. Many more are wounded. The U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, has been hit by drone attacks. Defense Department personnel in Bahrain have been wounded in Iranian drone strikes on military facilities. But that's just the beginning of the fallout. The escalation has been staggering. Just 72 hours after the U.S. and Israel began bombing Iran, the situation has spiraled dramatically. We're now seeing what can only be described as a regional conflagration expanding across the Middle East. The conflict has reached the very gates of Europe. There are legitimate fears of direct attacks on American soil. This was the front page of the New York Times, the nation's paper of record. The headline read, "Earthquake in the Gulf. Iran war expands to a dozen countries in 72 hours. The story explained that just 72 hours after the U.S. and Israel began bombing Iran, the conflict has already consumed nearly the entire Middle East. It has reached European borders, and it has sparked new legitimate concerns about potential Iranian retaliatory attacks on American territory. The Washington Post ran a story with this headline: "Trump pursues Iranian decapitation without a plan for what comes next." The reporting detailed how security officials across the Middle East and Europe have raised serious concerns that the United States is unleashing forces, military, political, economic, that could spill across borders, disrupt global commerce, trigger asymmetric terrorist attacks and reprisals, all without any confidence that this military action will actually achieve its stated objectives or improve America's strategic position. These aren't the opinions of fringe commentators. These are assessments coming from professional security officials working in the region. These are experienced foreign policy experts, and their consensus is clear. We have opened Pandora's box, and we don't know what's going to come out. So the fundamental question we must ask ourselves tonight is this: do we have our national security ducks in a row? Do we have our house in order? Does the American government appear to be prepared to manage this crisis? Do our leaders appear to be on the ball when it comes to national security, when it comes to protecting Americans at home and managing the potential fallout from military operations abroad? The answer, frankly, is deeply troubling. Let's start with the Department of Defense. The Secretary of Defense, the person responsible for managing the American military, had a somewhat unusual career before taking this position. His immediate previous job, the one right before President Trump gave him control of the U.S. Defense Department, was as a weekend co-host on a cable news program. He was on Fox and Friends. That was his last job. Now he's running the Pentagon. And he's already making decisions that are, let's call them, problematic. We've learned that the U.S. military operating under his direction has lost 3 F-15 fighter jets to friendly fire. Not combat loss, not losses to enemy action, friendly fire. Because the U.S. military did not properly coordinate with our allies in Kuwait. So Kuwait's air defense systems shot down 3 American fighter jets. This is what we're dealing with in terms of military competence at the highest levels. Now, here at home, we're protected by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That should provide some comfort. But there's an issue there as well. The FBI Director, Kash Patel, recently made a decision that can only be described as catastrophically timed and strategically indefensible. This is a man who has been in the headlines for the wrong reasons. We're talking about federal resources being used to fly him to Italy so he could attend a hockey game and drink beer in a locker room. There's also reporting that he's commandeered an elite FBI tactical team to serve as personal bodyguards and essentially a chauffeur service for his girlfriend. In the midst of this cloud of scandal and mismanagement last week, and I want to emphasize the timing here. Last week, just days before the United States military launched major operations against Iran, FBI Director Kash Patel fired a dozen FBI agents and staff members. Not low-level administrative personnel. We're talking about trained intelligence officers. We're talking about highly experienced counterintelligence and counterespionage specialists. Where did these people work? They worked in the CI-12 unit, the exact unit I described earlier, the unit that specializes in countering Iranian intelligence operations, the unit that has the deepest expertise in identifying and disrupting Iranian threats to American security. That unit. He fired them last week. The timing is absolutely staggering. The U.S. government has just initiated military operations against Iran. Operations that intelligence assessments indicate pose significant risk of Iranian retaliation on American soil. And the FBI director has eliminated the dedicated team of specialists who are most equipped to identify and counter such retaliation. Why did he do this? According to the Washington Post and the New York Times, Trump made this decision as a favor, not based on intelligence assessments, not based on security concerns, but essentially as a political favor. There was no credible intelligence suggesting that these agents posed a security risk. There was no operational necessity for their removal. They were eliminated because that's what the president wanted. The message this sends is deeply troubling. It tells the world, and particularly it tells Iran, that the United States has just degraded its own counterintelligence capability at precisely the moment when it's most needed. Now, we also have the Department of Homeland Security. This is the agency responsible for domestic security. It's run by Kristi Noem. You may remember her from her previous role as governor of South Dakota, where she became something of a controversial figure. She's best known, perhaps, for taking the Coast Guard commandant's house for herself, quite literally taking a property that belonged to a military officer and converting it to her own use. During her tenure in office, Noem has focused primarily on what she describes as border security and immigration enforcement. But in practice, what we've seen is the deployment of militarized federal troops across the United States to, frankly, intimidate and terrorize people in communities across the country. That's what her tenure has been about. Currently, she's working on what can only be described as a disturbing project: the establishment of a massive network of prison camps, detention facilities where American citizens could be sent without trial. These would be used by the Trump administration to indefinitely detain people without due process, without judicial review. As of this moment, that effort is not going well. There are legal challenges, there are logistical problems, but the intent is clear. So Kristi Noem is running Homeland Security right now at this extraordinarily fraught, extraordinarily dangerous moment in American history when the country faces potential escalating military conflict. It's Kristi Noem who's in charge of domestic security and public safety. But here's where it gets worse. Because now that the Trump administration has started this military conflict with Iran, a nation that is particularly sophisticated in cyber warfare, Kristi Noem is also in charge of American cybersecurity. She oversees the nation's cyber defense operations. I want to be clear about Iran's capabilities here. Iran's security services and intelligence organizations are not just powerful and well-resourced. They are particularly sophisticated in cyber operations. Cyber warfare is one of the areas where Iran has demonstrated the most advanced capabilities and the most ambitious operational goals. They are extremely competent in this domain. So who did Kristi Noem appoint to run America's cybersecurity defense? Who did she put in charge of protecting American computer networks, critical infrastructure, government systems from Iranian cyber attacks? Politico just published an in-depth profile of this individual. The headline reads, "Canceled contracts, a failed polygraph, and personal disputes inside the turbulent tenure of Kristi Noem's former cyber czar." I emphasize former. He only became former on Thursday. He was just fired, less than 48 hours before the Trump administration launched military operations against Iran, a nation with world-class cyber warfare capabilities. The nation's top cybersecurity official was terminated from his position. Who was this person? According to the reporting, he had absolutely no prior experience in the federal government before Kristi Noem appointed him. None. He had previously served a 10-month stint under Kristi Noem when she was governor of South Dakota. His title was Chief Information Officer for the state. That was the extent of his qualifications. But here's what happened while he was running America's cybersecurity. In August, just a few months ago, he triggered a Department of Homeland Security-wide damage assessment. What did he do? He took sensitive, classified agency contracting documents, information that is highly restricted, information that other staff at the agency are not permitted to even access for security reasons. And he uploaded it to a public version of ChatGPT. He put it on the internet. He gave it to an AI system without security clearance. This is precisely the kind of behavior that causes intelligence agencies nightmares. He also failed a counterintelligence polygraph exam. This is not a routine screening process. This is a specialized examination designed to detect deception regarding foreign intelligence and security matters. He failed it. What was Kristi Noem's response? Did she remove him from the position? Did she initiate an investigation? No. Homeland Security initially characterized the polygraph as unsanctioned. They then accused other staff of misleading him about the need for the test. They blamed other people for making him take the polygraph that he failed. And she kept him in the job. He remained in charge of American cybersecurity despite failing a counterintelligence polygraph exam. The message was clear. We don't care about the security implications. We don't care that you failed a polygraph designed to identify potential security risks. You're staying in the job. But there's more to this story. It reveals something about how this person operated when he had power. Last summer, he became aware that a CISA employee, an employee at the nation's premier cybersecurity agency, had made an obscene gesture at his personal vehicle, his Tesla Cybertruck. The vehicle was parked in an agency parking lot, unoccupied. The employee did not appear to know it was his truck. How did he find out who did this? The Tesla Cybertruck has an onboard camera system. He accessed the footage, he reviewed the dashcam video from his parked truck, he identified the employee who had given the vehicle a middle finger gesture. Then he had the CISA security office formally identify the employee, and then he suspended that employee from their job. Why had the employee been frustrated enough to make that gesture? Because this director's Cybertruck had been left in a shared electric vehicle charging port for 4 days at a time. The employee was frustrated that the charging port was being monopolized by one person's vehicle, preventing others from using it. So this is who Kristi Noem put in charge of America's cybersecurity, a person who would misuse security apparatus to identify and punish an employee for making a gesture at an unoccupied vehicle. A person who has such thin skin, such a vindictive approach to power that he would use his position to retaliate against an employee's moment of frustration. How did he manage to stay in that position for so long, despite these obvious red flags? According to Politico, Kristi Noem was hesitant to remove him because she and Corey Lewandowski, a special advisor at Homeland Security, feared that firing him would reflect poorly on her. Let me translate that. They weren't concerned about national security. They weren't concerned about his demonstrated incompetence. They were concerned about political optics. They were worried about how it would look. So they left him in place in control of American cybersecurity, despite clear evidence of poor judgment, security violations, and abusive management. He was only removed from the position on Thursday. That's literally days ago. Homeland Security doesn't just oversee cybersecurity. The department also manages Customs and Border Protection. And this is where we see more evidence of the broader dysfunction. A couple of weeks ago, Customs and Border Protection did something remarkable. They accidentally shut down the entire airspace over El Paso, Texas. How? They used a military-grade laser, a laser weapon system, to shoot down what they believed was a security threat. What was the threat? Happy Valentine's Day, Mylar party balloons. That actually happened. The airspace over a major American city was shut down because federal agents used military equipment to shoot down party balloons. But wait, there's more. Last week, airspace over another part of Texas had to be shut down again. This time, it was Pete Hegseth's Defense Department, the Secretary of Defense's department, also using a laser weapon system to shoot down what they believed was an unidentified drone. Whose drone was it? It was a drone belonging to Customs and Border Protection. So we have the Department of Defense shooting down equipment operated by another federal agency. The level of communication, coordination, and basic competence required to prevent federal agencies from shooting at each other has apparently been lost somewhere in this administration. All of it is happening at a moment when the United States has just initiated military operations against one of the most capable and unpredictable adversaries we've faced in generations. Iran is not a third-rate military power. Iran has demonstrated sophisticated capabilities in asymmetric warfare, in cyber operations, in intelligence gathering, and in terrorism tactics. They have shown themselves to be capable, innovative, and willing to accept significant costs to achieve their objectives. And at this precise moment, when we need maximum competence, maximum coordination, maximum professionalism from our national security apparatus, we instead have an FBI director who has just fired the specialists most equipped to counter Iranian threats, a Secretary of Defense whose previous job was on a cable news show, a Department of Homeland Security running what amounts to a circus of incompetence. A cybersecurity apparatus that just lost its director, a man who had failed a polygraph and violated basic security protocols, federal agencies shooting at each other with military weapons. This is the team that is supposed to defend the United States right now. Let me be clear about what we've lost. There are 6 American service members who are dead. They died in military operations that American intelligence agencies assessed were unnecessary. Operations that were undertaken not because of an imminent threat, but because foreign governments told the president to do them. There are many more Americans who are wounded. There are families who are grieving tonight. There are communities that have lost members. And the apparatus that was specifically designed and trained to counter the resulting Iranian threat, CI-12, the unit of dedicated counterintelligence professionals, has been dismantled. Those agents and analysts who dedicated their careers to understanding Iranian intelligence operations were fired just days before we initiated military operations against Iran. We have a situation where the United States government has started a military conflict with Iran, a conflict that intelligence assessments indicated was not strategically necessary, and we have simultaneously degraded our ability to counter the inevitable consequences of that conflict. The question we must ask ourselves is simple. How did we get here? How is it that the most powerful nation on earth finds itself in this position? How is it that we have individuals with questionable judgment, with clear security violations, with inadequate experience running the most critical national security agencies at the most dangerous moment? The answer involves failures of judgment at the highest levels of government, failures of institutional culture within our intelligence and security agencies, and a level of political dysfunction that prioritizes loyalty and political optics over national security. These are not problems that will be solved quickly, but they are problems that the American people need to understand because the consequences of getting national security wrong are catastrophic. We have a lot more to cover tonight. We'll have more detailed analysis on these issues and what they mean for American security moving forward. For now, I'm your news anchor, and that's the situation as we understand it this evening.